forwarding group session 9, and this session address ethics and ESG integration in corporate governance, discussing how organizations can embed ethical principles and ESG priorities into enterprise risk strategies. So this session is moderated by Saloni, Tuteja, Head of Legal and Compliance of Servier UAE, and our panelist includes Arbnora, Jashanica, ESG Advisory and Board Director of the World Bank Group, and Noradi from Kosovo. Gbiamango, Fabrice, Yewawa, Attorney at Law of Yewawa Law Firm from USA, and Mr. Lalu, Pillai, Senior Trade Compliance and Logistic Manager, Middle East, Africa, and Pakistan of Trane Technology, UAE. Please join the stage and please welcome our speaker and give a big round of applause to them. Now over to you, Saloni.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I know we are overlapping with lunch, that's why audience has thinned out a bit. And congratulations on your award, 20 years of excellence, that's amazing. So our panel today is actually very interesting, despite the thin audience here. And the session name is Ethics and ESG. I won't bore you with the full form of ESG, I'm sure most of us already know about it. Integration in corporate governance. While we can go on for hours and hours on this topic, but we'll try and limit ourselves to the time limit. Otherwise, organizers will not be happy about it. So let's start by introduction. I'll go first, given the mic is in my hand. My name is Saloni Tuteja. I'm Head of Legal and Compliance for Middle East region for a French pharma company called Servier. I'm an Indian based in Dubai, and I have a deep love for academics. I've done my master's from UC Berkeley, and I just completed my master's in anti-corruption and diplomacy from United Nations. I have been an in-house counsel for 10 years, and before that, I was a partner in a law firm for 7 years. So around 17 years, still not 20 years, going to be soon. So that's a bit of my journey, both as an external counsel or a private practitioner, and now in-house counsel. And before I pass the mic to everybody, to my esteemed colleague, all the opinions, because I'm a lawyer, I'll put a disclaimer, all the opinions that are said here is not reflective of the company that they come from, it's their own perspective, so please take that with a pinch of salt. So maybe Arbnora, you can go for an introduction.
Yeah, because I have mic as well. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Arbnora Jashanica. I come from Kosovo, a sweet small country in Europe, the newest one in Europe. I am engaged, I have more than 25 years of experience, mainly in financial industry, financial sector, including banks, MFIs, microfinance institution, insurance and reinsurance companies. So my career started in bank as starting from the bottom line position, like cashier, advisor for business loans, and moving forward to what we call backup position or backup roles, heading internal audit department, risk management group department, internal control, compliance, regulatory compliance, data protection, and so on and so forth. Recently, or the last 5 years, I'm engaged with IFC, which is World Bank Group, as corporate governance consultant responsible for Europe, Central Asia, and Africa. Parallelly to that, I founded and running my own advisory and consulting company, which is again same as my engagement with the World Bank, is focused on corporate governance, risk management, internal control, internal audit, and absolutely ESG, the most hottest topic of this regional and all regions that I operate. So this is me. I'm very honored to be invited to this summit, and I look forward to everything that I heard yesterday and then I will hear today to implement and to use for our further business.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Gbiamango Fabrice Yewawa, and I am a corporate lawyer. I'm based in the United States, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and North Carolina. So I was in a private law firm for 5 years. And then I decided to, what we say in the United States, hang up my chango, so go solo. And I've been a solo practitioner for 10 years, so total of 15 years, shy of 25 years to get to 20. And congratulations again on your award. That's a pretty good accomplishment. It's not easy. My law firm is, like I said earlier, is based in 3 states, in the United States. And we have about 10 full-time lawyers and 2 part-time lawyers. So we are specialized in corporate law, business law, and employment law. This is a great honor for me to be here. This is my first time in Dubai. I'm kind of shocked because I was hoping to get warm weather. It's kind of chilly. It's okay. So yeah, it's okay. So yeah, that's all about me. I'm glad to be on the panel today, and hopefully we'll have a wonderful, insightful, and productive discussion.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lalu Pillai. I work for an American-based Ireland company, which is an American company but registered in Ireland. That's what it means. I work for Trane Technologies, and we are the largest manufacturers of air conditioning chillers. Probably you have never heard of Trane Technologies as an air conditioning supplier. The reason is we don't deal with residential units. We don't deal with the split units and all the stuff. So we only go with the large commercial units. And we're the one who cater cooling to Burj Khalifa, the Palms, the Discovery Gardens, and all these areas. It's been covered by our company. So I have an MBA from India. Then I have a PhD in management in supply chain. That too from India. And I have the unique opportunity to work in 3 continents. One is North America, then Europe, and one is, of course, Asia. So by the last 6 years, I'm based in Ireland, but I'm looking after Middle East, Africa, Pakistan, and India region. So that's why I'm here. So I often travel to Dubai, and this is one of the rarest occasions that when this conference was here, I am in. So I thought of joining the panelists, and thank you Tuteja, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And Fabrice, welcome to Dubai. This is the best time you've come here. And this is the 2-3 months we really look forward to and party outside. So let us know if you need some tips on that. So like I said, this topic is actually very interesting, at least for us as panelists, and I hope for you as well. So while I usually am an impromptu speaker, just to stick to time, I have kind of made notes. And I would like to start maybe with the meaning of ethics, ESG, and corporate governance, and this may create a foundation for the questions ahead. So let me start by the meaning of ethics. Like I said, I've noted it down specifically. Otherwise, I would have gone for hours on it. Ethics actually ensures fair practices, honesty, and respect for stakeholders, forming the foundation of trust and preventing harm. And this definition, of course, is more from business perspective. We can obviously have meanings from personal perspective as well. Now, what does ESG mean? ESG is actually a framework to evaluate a company's performance and risks in sustainability and ethical issues. So it's more of a parameter. Then last but not the least, what does corporate governance mean? And of course, all my co-panelists will be talking about each of these elements in detail. Corporate governance is actually the system of rules, regulations, and practices used to direct and control a company, focusing on accountability, which is usually missing, responsibility, and transparency. So there are various parameters that these rules focus on. Now, while we have spoken about these ethics and ESG and corporate governance, how does it connect? The connection is easy to say, difficult to achieve, is ethics sets the moral foundation for what company can do and should do. ESG measures how a company performs against ethical and sustainability goals. And corporate governance actually provides the system. Like I said, now we'll be focusing on all these topics either solely or cumulatively during the panel discussion. And Lalu, I'll take the honor to calling you doctor since you have done PhD. So doctor, how do you think that ethics work vis-a-vis governance? So can you elaborate a bit on that?
Okay. See, there is a golden statement about ethics. Ethics is something which makes you to do things rightly. And ESG is the thing, which makes the right thing, do it more wisely and intelligently. And that's a golden statement, when you speak about ethics as well as ESG. So if someone asks me a question, like why ethics is important or what are the distinctive advantage you're gonna get from an ethics, implementing an ethics in a company. So I would say there are three very important things you will achieve with ethics. One is a moral foundation. We are going to achieve a moral foundation in the company. Second thing, implementation of ethical procedures in a company is going to drive you to take the right decision making beyond the legal aspects. The third and last thing is going to give you an integrity throughout the company. So the first point was in a moral foundation. Yes, ethics is the one who's going to frame what you can do, what you cannot do, the policies which the complete company, the complete organization has to follow. And this is what we are going to decide. Okay, like there's a saying in English, penny wise, pound foolish. We shouldn't be penny wise, pound foolish. That comes in ethics. I'll just give you a live example. We all know about Servier. There was an embargo as well as Syria was a sanctioned country few months back. Then US has lifted the sanctions. But even though US has lifted the sanctions, in most of the companies, corporate companies, they are still not able to deal with Syria. The prime reason for we are not able to deal with Syria is there is still financial restrictions. For example, if you have it, like we get on a day in, day out, we get thousands of inquiries, big projects, like millions of dollars projects, inquiries from Syria. The problem is when we check with our own system, we got to know that banks like Citibank, Deutsche Bank, as well as JP Morgan, of course, they don't want to carry the funds from Syria because there are still financial restrictions. Financial restrictions are in place, which is not being lifted yet. So it's going to take probably one more year to become everything normal. Until and unless, if you start doing a business, you're really jeopardizing your reputation. We will have a serious issue, absolutely serious issue of negative publicity, which can really hamper your image in the market. So ethics is something which drives the policy, which derives the policy, and which asks you to follow the policy. So that's very important. That's a foundation. It's an absolute foundation for any company to do the right things at the right place. The second point was, it allows you to think or a decision. It gives you a leverage of decision making beyond the legal aspects. For example, conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is something which can never be measured by legal aspects. Conflict of interest is something which we have to individually assess, and individually we have to take a decision. That goes with ethics. That definitely goes with ethics. Then employees, the treating the employees on the similar platform or without any sort of injustice or discrimination. That's two very important, and that comes with ethics. If you don't apply the right ethics in your organization, definitely discrimination would happen in that particular organization, which can definitely pull you down in terms of performance as well as your revenue numbers. So these two factors, the third one is integrity. Integrity means we have to have a culture which really have, like treat the people alike, and we, like especially the senior board of members and the senior management should have the tone of what ethics standards we set for. That's what, the people, those who follow them is going to follow, and people, those who are going to do the things on a grassroots level is going to follow. So it's so important, culturally you integrate a company, especially with the ethics and compliance trainings. There are companies, especially in my companies, I would proud to say my company is one of the companies, and if you don't sign ethics and compliance training, and if you don't do ethics and compliance training, which comes every year, which you have to spend 5 hours for lots of questions, lots of interactive actions, like you cannot just open your computer, run the show, and come with a score. No, everyone has to score 80%. And so you have to be extremely careful in what you answer. So your boss is gonna get a notification if you fail 5 times. So for example, like I did not pay attention, so it ran for 5 hours. Then, like the second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, if I do it, the boss will get to know that, this gentleman is not giving concentration or, not paying attention to this particular program, which is very essential for our company. So this platform is provided, this integrity element is provided by ethics. If you don't have ethics, you don't have a right foundation for a company. That's what my answer is. Thank you, Anuja.
Thanks, Doctor. I think what you said is so interesting, ethics, integrity, and I think the result of everything is that you said right now is culture. It's an umbrella under which the company really works.
You absolutely picked that point. That's right thing, yes.
And another aspect, at least that resonated with me, is dealing with countries like Syria and Iraq, is, so I come from a pharma company, and of course pharmaceuticals are an exception in embargoes many times, because of course life comes first before embargoes. But then the way you do business in sanctioned countries, and I don't want to just say Syria, it is any sanctioned country, is so tough, because at one point you're calculating the risk on the company versus the revenue, but at the same time even one life matters, right? So I think that's where your corporate governance, your ethics, integration, culture, everything comes together, because that helps you take the decision for these high-risk company, whether it's countries, whether it's because of sanction, because of corruption, whatever parameter we want to say. So that becomes extremely tough. In fact, many times you are in companies, and maybe our panelists here can support. I know you do a lot of trainings for board members. There are trainings given just for these high-risk countries, because again, while revenue is important, lives are equally important. So I think I'll just now navigate to the next question to Arbnora. What governance mechanisms ensure ESG and ethics aren't just promises, because that can be just a checkbox, but are actually monitored and enforced? And it would be great to know you are with the World Bank, you train board members regularly. It would be very interesting to know your perspective.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is very interesting to me to hear about ESG perspective from legal experts. I come from finance world, but anyway, we narrowed down to the same purpose. So you started our conversation by mentioning that ESG is something that we all know about.
At least claim to know about.
Yeah, we claim that for sure we claim to know about, because many companies, they see ESG as a fancy word, and they see ESG as a gym membership, something fancy to have it and talking proudly about it, but not necessarily using it. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges across the market that I do operate. Most companies today have some ESG reporting, some forms of ESG reporting, or they have a code of ethics or code of conduct designed in their corporate governance framework, or they have a sustainability section into their annual report, and they think that they are covered and they are compliant and they are fully ESG integrated company. So when you go deeper, you see and you realize that ESG is just, or it's not happening at all, or it's happening on the side. This is where the board of director perspective comes in, because we always say that it starts from the top. So as a board member, we should start asking questions like where ESG fits in my business model, in risk management, in incentives, or in performance. So as a board of directors, it is very important for us to understand the real meaning of ESG, and most importantly, the impact that it has in our companies and where we should fit it properly. Good governance, as you said, turns promises into practices. So we are at the stage that we cannot say that ESG is just about checking the boxes or exercise that someone is asking for it. ESG for companies that are smart enough is an activity, not a standalone activity, but it's a group of activities that will help companies identify risks and translate those risks into business opportunity. I will share with you some concrete mechanism what companies should consider while integrating ESG, and how they can better perform by using ESG, not as a standalone activity, as I said, or not as an exercise or activity that will a headache activity, but something that it can be included in strategy and translated directly into ROI enormously, like in return on investment. So from the examples, I would share a telecom company who established sustainability and ethics committee, and by that they made ESG activities very focused and not just a once per year presentation. So the company at the beginning, it felt like they are doing short-term costs, but in a long term that made board aware of where better to use these activities for their business profits and business model. Another mechanism is by putting and considering controls inside existing processes. A bank in Europe integrated ESG indicators in their credit decisions. So if the client was subject to environmental and social high risk, then that client was subject to enhanced due diligence. In some of the cases, banks that will have clients with high risk environmental and social, then they will apply a higher interest rate. So thinking about cost, then that's a short-term mindset, not a long-term mindset, because as you can see, it's not only about one company, but it is about stakeholders that you interact with. Another example is a mining company. They created a simple dashboard, but considering safety, emissions, water, and so on and so forth. So what happened is that when those KPIs moved, because they integrated KPIs, ESG indicators into executive KPIs, and once the KPIs moved, bonuses moved as well. So it was directly again related to financial impact. Another example that I want to share as a good mechanism is that internal audit testing ESG data. So there are companies that they are integrating ESG indicators into internal auditors' annual plan. And trust me, once visited by internal audit, magically ESG indicators improved and data improved, and the company did a better performance. So talking about consequences for misconduct. For example, a topic that is quite related to ethics. A construction firm dismissed a most high-perform worker because of the repeated ethical violation. And what I've seen is that the company, with this stand-alone activity, with this stand-alone decision, improved company culture more than any training program that could ever do. So it is about a board perspective on how to ask the right question about ESG and how to get the right information. But not only that, they need to monitor those information, they need to monitor those activities are being implemented, and they need to have a regular reporting package, ESG indicators as well.
Absolutely. And one interesting thing, maybe I'll take a step back, and while it's the most important for the board to ask the right questions, but it is also our duty, be it as an external counsel, consultant, in-house counsel, in-house professional, to also educate the board members. For them, GRC, ESG, corporate responsibility sometimes can be too confusing. And to be honest, I think these concepts have changed too often. When I started my career 17 years back, corporate responsibility or social corporate responsibility was the buzzword. And then came GRC and now ESG. And I'm sure a few days later it'll be some other term. I think the important is not about the terminology used, but the sentiment by which this entire concept is running. So first responsibility of ours as a compliance officer, legal officer, or professional, anybody who has an interest and inclination about these concepts is to educate the board, because if you don't educate the board, I don't think so they'll be even understand what are the right questions and what are the wrong questions. So I think that is extremely relevant. The other trick that I often use when I'm trying to reinforce the tone at the top is also marrying the concepts of ESG or GRC, whatever we want to call it, to business revenue. See, at the end of the day, board is also is responsible towards their stakeholders, to their shareholders if it's a public listed company. So if you kind of can relate these concepts to revenue, I think they just become a little more receptive to these ideas. They become a little more receptive about spending money. Nothing comes free. Even this conference has some expenditure. So doing that kind of gives you an ear. And once they understand this concept and understand the fact not being compliant, not following GRC principles, what it costs. Today, I think you mentioned that there are companies that if they're not GRC compliant have a higher interest rate. A lot of vendor forms have specific columns today related to GRC, ESG, ethics. Have you ever been under litigation for corruption, etc., etc. So people are focusing. I think these to-dos have gone beyond now. Check boxes have gone beyond, because I know it is now directly impacting revenue and of course reputation in a large way. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to echo with you, it's important to highlight that for board to ask right question doesn't mean they have to become ESG experts, because usually when I meet with board of directors, and it happens quite oftenly, of different companies, private companies and public companies as well, they will start asking me, what now I cannot start school for ESG or become ESG expert. And then my immediate answer would be, well, you are not even financial expert sometimes, but you're sitting in the board. So what is important here is the board to have interest on having people absolutely designated to perform the duties that are required. And also it is very important to highlight that ESG reporting is not mandatory yet in most of the countries. So this is another obstacle that people feel comfortable of not having it or of not establishing it, because they lack information and they lack proper guidance. As I said, the smart companies will integrate ESG regardless of regulatory requirements or not. But companies that would want to start partner with international financial credible institution, then they have to have ESG integration. Otherwise, they will not be considered for partnership. Or in case of commercial banks, there are a lot of banks, as I mentioned earlier, that companies that they are not integrating or considering ESG, they either will be rejected for loans or for any other product, or they will be given a higher interest rate, and that will absolutely impact the profit and financial statements directly. So yeah, it is
Absolutely.
important just to highlight that boards of directors doesn't need to become expert of ESG.
Absolutely. As long as they understand the sentiment, I think we've won half the battle, if not full. And I really like what you said. I think ESG has gone from a luxury or may have to should have right now, and it's not very distinctive future that will become a must-have. So with that, I'll maybe take the question to Doctor. And we were talking about, marrying ESG concept to revenue. Can you highlight some distinctive advantages of ESG or corporate governance, or ESG in corporate governance?
See, these are all the new terminologies which came into the world, ESG and all that stuff. So anyway, probably even we have another conference after 5 years, we will be having a different terminology, and I'm sure about it. Okay, let's go with the ESG. ESG is one of the key factors of business today. First, the environmental, the word environment, which is going to decide and which is going to really restrict and support you, how you gonna tackle the supply chain disturbances. Few years back, we all suffered with the corona, and we know that most of the manufacturers around the world, they suffered with a chip which was coming from China. Most of the car manufacturers, they stopped manufacturing the cars just because they have everything except the chip, which is the most which is the one which controls the whole car. So people or the world got to know ESG is most important when corona came in. Now, there are lots of supply chain resilience activities, supply chain, like rehabilitation activities happening in this world to ensure that in case of an environmental issue happens, the functions are not like affected by these things. So ESG will definitely give you an idea of foreseeing the things and doing the right things well in advance. That's the first thing we will get with ESG. That's one of the most distinctive advantage of having an ESG in a company. Second thing, this gives you a corporate branding. For example, environmental and social activities embedded in a company corporate aspects, which gives you, like once you are getting qualified for Forbes 100 list, for Forbes 500 list, there are few things which Forbes looks into your organization is, how you applied ESG. So this is going to give you a corporate branding. There are companies, those are coming up with a new idea that, like by 2030, 40% of the mid-level managers would be women. I don't know how many of your company have applied into it, but my company, we have a mission that by 2030, 40% of the mid-level managers would be women. So we are indirectly driving the gender equality. We are socially responsible to ensure that this world is a much better place compared to today to live. So ESG drives for that. That's third and last thing. When we announced that by 2030, in Trane Technologies, 40% of the mid-level managers would be women, it became a big news in all over the world. And even, like it came into all trade magazines and even in newspapers, dailies. The best advantage of having something on dailies is this can strengthen, your shares. Like people will be inclined to buy more shares, and your share value will be much better compared to the previous dates, the previous days. So ESG is very important. It gives you an environmental, like foreseeing activity or foreseeing ability. Second thing, it's gonna give you a corporate branding. And second and last, is really gonna support your share value. That will be very happy for our stakeholders. That's what it is.
Thanks, Doctor. And Fabrice, I've not forgotten you. So maybe you can take these, they help us segue further into what are the advantages or why does ESG matter to companies and businesses? Doctor mentioned few points. If you can elaborate more on that, Fabrice, it will be amazing.
Thank you for the question. So I'll pick back on the previous topic, which was about ethics and sanctions. I would say for those companies that are afraid of going to do business in Syria or Iran, they are welcome to come to Venezuela. Just kidding. But anyway, so I have had the privilege to work with some companies in the United States, mostly startups, owners and CEOs, and they usually ask me, what the heck is ESG? It's a fancy word. How can you break this down? So when I started to explain them the importance or the advantages of ESG, I had about 85 slides, very, detailed. And at the end of that presentation, they will ask me again, well, when you go to the fifth or the sixth slides, we got lost. So from that point, I decided to break it down, in a clear way, simple way, so people can understand it. And I hope, the audience today will be able to take advantage of that. So one of the advantages of ESG is increased innovation. Increased innovation because ESG pushes companies to be more mindful of energy efficiency and waste management. And if you look at, for example, Tesla, I don't know if you guys are aware with Tesla company, owned by Elon Musk. They started what they call the electrical cars. They stepped away from oil or fuel. Because of that, General Motors, GM, also followed them. And GM now is making more electrical cars. And I think Ford will also follow them and make more electrical cars. So we're going toward more electrical cars than fuel cars. But it will slow down probably in these few years, just because the new administration does not approve fully ESG, but I'll get to it toward the end. But it's something that the trend has begun and it'll go forward. The second advantage of ESG is more growth and business opportunities. So, like I said, I deal with a lot of startups, CEOs, and most of them are millennials. And
just like all of us here, right?
yes.
almost millennials.
Correct. And they are more conscious about preserving the environment, social justice, and corporate corporate malpractice. So, and you add to that social media, they have such a very powerful tool to use to be more active, to raise the awareness about the danger of if you not comply with ESG. You know, they want, you know, the environment where they live in to be better. They want that people are treated equally. And also they want government to address their needs. Um, and when it comes to the needs, they want the government to make rules or laws that will help them increase the market so they can sell their products. So that's one thing. The other thing is the other advantage of ESG is better investment opportunities. Now stakeholders and investors are investing more in businesses, companies that are emerging into sustainable technology. They are investing in more companies. They are more toward philanthropic ventures. So for that, it's also a growing business. And when you talk about philanthropic way, it's more toward environment. And environment is a big deal. So that's another advantage of ESG. And the other advantage of ESG is cost savings. I was talking about, you know, electrical cars. If you have a Tesla, you can save roughly about $220 monthly compared to someone who has a fuel or gas car. So if you do $220 multiplied by 12, so it's about over $2,000, 2,000 some dollars. So that's a lot of money that you can save. So it's cost savings. And also, the other advantage is attracting and retaining talent. That's where Doctor was saying with his company that the target is by 2030 to attract more women, and which is a good thing. In the United States, we have had this policy that we call DEI. I don't know if you guys are familiar with DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's not only attracting women, it also attracts minorities, underrepresented population, based on race, gender, and disability as well. But yeah, that's been a good thing. It made companies to be more diverse and also bring more talented folks. To end this, since I'm come from the United States, I would like to address ESG is not mandatory in the United States. ESG is optional. And it deal at the federal level before this Trump administration, they were trying to enforce it at the federal level, which they did a really good job. When the Trump administration came, then they're starting to sweep away many policies related to ESG. And one of them is DEI. So in the federal government now, you cannot talk about DEI. Companies that have contract with the federal government, they have to make sure they don't have that DEI policy or you lose your contract. And also, they, for the second time, the United States withdrawn from the Paris Accord or agreement. So those, and that's related to environment, and those are the things that were very good for the for ESG, but the United States kind of withdrawn for it. So those are the advantages, and I think I made it clear, and I will give back the microphone to our moderator.
I think, Fabrice, what you said was so interesting is your advantages that you listed were not only focused on material gains, but also non-material advantages that one can benefit from following, even if not mandatory, ESG framework or protocol. The other thing, inclusion and diversity is such a wide concept. It has sexual orientation. The other thing that I have recently seen quite a lot is also about ageism, discrimination against certain ages, if you're too old or too young, and especially in California where everyone is a millennial or younger. And also, then I also read about inclusion and diversity based on your medical condition. So if you are pregnant or you are an HIV patient or HIV positive, they cannot discriminate. So, it has gone much beyond what started as just race or gender and then it went to sexual orientation. Now it's just become so wide a concept. I think the underlining concept is just don't discriminate. I think that's the underline. But I'm very impressed by what you said is ESG is not only governing the present, but also defining the future. So that was pretty interesting. You wanted to say something?
I would like to add something really quickly. I agree with the panelists. I think ESG has to be mandatory. In the United States, they are doing a pretty good job at the state level. Like she said, it includes now age, your sexual orientation, and other things. I think the solution will be Congress, the U.S. Congress, to come together as bipartisan and pass a law that will make ESG mandatory. That way, it doesn't matter which administration comes to the White House, it will be already a law. I think that's the solution, and hopefully, we'll get to that point at some point.
I think I've just been informed that we are up the time. So I'll maybe ask the last question, if that's okay with the panelists. Arbnora, I'll ask maybe to you. We've spoken so much about long-term benefits and what good, bad, or ugly it is doing today. But maybe you can, from practical aspect, explain how do companies balance short-term gains or financial pressure with long-term ESG commitments? If you can give us a practical perspective on that.
Absolutely. I can talk till New Year about this topic, but I'll try to I'll try to keep it short. Sometimes I say that ESG is a bit of like starting to eat healthy. You want to start eating healthy, for in the long term, it's very good for you, but the pressure of quarterly results, because we know how the quarterly result pressure is, that makes us look more of a fast food options, because fast food option then becomes very tempting. So in this sense, responsible companies or smart companies, they will not focus on short-term painful costs maybe, because on a long term they know that they will benefit a tremendous time that they invested. What I would like to share are some examples of the company, because theoretically we heard a lot, and I know that everyone here can hear a lot about advantages, definition, and so on and so forth. But what companies are doing, this is very important to share and to know. For example, I work with a manufacturing company, and they start investing in LED and smart energy systems. Of course, in a short run, it was a painful cost, because the cost increased so highly. But within a year, the profit turned out to be 3 times more than a previous year. So even that short-term painful cost was present, anyhow it represented long-term profit. Another company that I want to share with is a hospital that during budget problems, they did not understaffed at all. So what happened is that they saved the company by reducing turnover, costs of turnover, and also preventing company from patient incidents. So this directly impacted their financial statement or their profit. Another company that I would like to share is a retailer, a trade retailer company who invested in a on their suppliers. This was very, how to say, at the beginning it was not considered as something smart, but it turned out that it not only saved its suppliers, but also saved itself from future reputational risk, and reduces costs and remain its global clients. So we have to understand that there are a lot of examples that show us that ESG sometimes brings money immediately. In some companies, it reduces future risks, and for some companies, it helps them unlock new markets. What is important to highlight here is that we should never be given we should never consider choosing between performance and responsibility, rather than we should, as regardless what industry we are in, as a company, we should redefine performance by incorporating and by having responsibility as part of it.
Absolutely. And before I open for audience to ask question, maybe I'll ask my learned panelists to give one remark each or a takeaway. And Doctor, I'll start with you, Fabrice, then you, and one-liner.
The line is
very tough, but
ethics makes you do things correctly, and ESG makes you do the same thing wisely and intelligently with a more profitable basis. That's it.
Amazing. Fabrice?
Well, I would say do ESG, comply with ESG, make the world better for all of us.
Strong governance embraces ESG and translates ESG indicators into profit and a better place to live for everyone.
Absolutely. And mine would be, while I'm tongue-tied now, which is not so often, is if you think ESG is expensive, try being without it. So with that, does anybody have any questions before we close the panel? Or any remark or any practically, if they have, yes, we have one gentleman.
The changing trend against DEI in the recent years. There are obvious benefits of ESG, and incorporating that in corporate governance. I'm curious to know from your, as practitioners, in your view, given the, ROI or return on some of the ESG initiatives, why has the perspective among a lot of corporates turned against it in the recent years? Now, there's a political impact to it, and and there's a political, movement, in the U.S. specifically, that has driven some of these things. But are there, like, in your corporate experiences, in your practices, do you see some other aspects to it as well, or is it primarily driven by the political ideology or those factors? I mean, if you have any comments on that.
Okay. Speaking from the U.S. perspective, we are doing such a great job at the state level and companies individually. Like I said, I deal most with startups, so they are young folks, millennials. So they're more aware of what ESG can do for them and for everyone. It's more political. Like I said earlier, before the Trump administration came back for the second time to the White House, ESG was going so far. Um, we did a lot of things better. The environment was a little bit safer, but they came back and they kind of hold us back also with a lot of policies. So to answer your question, as far as the United States is more political than companies or individuals.
Maybe I'll add something, and I'll move to you for a question. I think, first of all, your question is fantastic. And my perspective is very from an in-house counsel role is, I think there has been very confusing concepts. ESG, GRC, corporate social responsibility. I think we haven't been able to marry all these concepts well or create a journey or a story. I think that has confused the companies quite a bit. And I started my career in 2007. With that time, the buzzword was corporate social responsibility, CSR, and then we were being taught about GRC, now ESG, and each of them have beautiful concepts. But then, if you don't create a narrative, it confuses company, and precisely, and the confusion has also been not cleared by the companies or in-house teams is also because it's still not mandatory. The moment it becomes mandatory, I think a lot of confusion will vanish, because that's the truth, right? When compliance, and I have some compliance colleagues here as well, when compliance role started, and I talk about ethical FCPA compliances, 20 years back or 25 years back, that was also very confusing, but it has a journey. So, I think that is there, and again, political environment has not done any benefit. So it's there are a lot of factors involved, and again, for me, the primary is because it's not compulsory, companies may or may not be taking it as seriously.
Just shortly to add that, of course, absolutely agree with my colleagues about political perspective, but what I can share is that ESG is becoming mandatory in most of the countries, and I don't see it a step back. I see it a step forward because, as my colleague here mentioned, apart from what the country or what the state is doing, we have a change on customer behavior. So now customers are very responsible on when they decide about the product or about the services. In Europe, we see it very oftenly that they will not accept your products or your services just because they saw something was wrong with your company. Either you do not disclose your data, your financial information, either you do not disclose and you are not transparent whether or not you invest in any social impacted or environmental impacted activities. So apart from political issues, I see it a very securely moving forward into a future and becoming mandatory in most of the countries, but even in the countries where mandatory might take time, I see that customer behavior is absolutely a paramount factor for integrating ESG. Rather, it will be good, as I said, only smart companies embrace it on time, regardless if it's mandatory or not, because it can be translated into a profit. Like, you will identify risk, you will identify concerns, and then you will work on translating this into your benefit, into your business model that will absolutely impact your profit.
I think the lady here had a question, and then we'll move to you. And please, if you can tell your name, it'll be great.
Yes, thank you. My name's Kane Joku, and I'm an independent consultant from the UK. I just wanted to really just share my personal experience of where ESG has worked very well in practice by reducing cost savings. One of the clients that I've worked with recently had a very good ESG policy, And what they did was that in order to reduce carbon footprints, they've sort of streamlined all of their kind of team meetings. This is a global organization that has sort of offices throughout the world. And previously, they used to have maybe 3-4 meetings globally where people had to travel. And they've now reduced this in order to agree any sort of meetings where you have to go, travel. There needs to be a lot of discussion and real reasons for that. And they do a lot of these virtually. And this has reduced costs in terms of the cost that would be spent in traveling, at the same time reducing the carbon footprint and also giving them a good reputation in the industry and also making them more, reputationally more advantageous in terms of, new clients coming in and getting loans and getting, sort of other investments as well. So thank you. So just really
I think this is so interesting because, ESG, when we say it's not you change your entire product line, you change the entire way of working. I think baby steps are equally important. Just stop using paper. Put things, have digital copies. I think even if you're doing small steps, it is contributing a water, each droplet forms sea or ocean. So I think that is very important, and thank you for sharing experience. I think we'll take the last question.
It is very important to start small but start real, not just for publishing on website a big announcement of fancy titles, but to start small maybe, but to start real. This is very important.
Thank you. This is Abdulrahman Al-Jandal from AJ Consulting. There is some points regarding to the GRC and ESG, the relation between GRC and ESG. I believe that the GRC, it's like a second defense of the line of the corporates in the corporates. So the first line will be the board, and then GRC, and then internal audit. So the internal audit, it's a line both of them as a defense lines. For the ESG, I believe it's like a branding of the companies. And to be honest, and there is no directly impact on the ESG. But my question here, who is the responsible in the in-house companies to drafting the ESG report? And as our companies in Saudi, the listed company requirement as a nearly will be requirement to assign the ESG report as an annually report from the listed company. But for the unlisted company, no, there is no requirement, never ever. As a just branding, as I said. Even with that, the listed company, some of them drafting the ESG report for the branding methods. So what do you think about that? And who is the responsible to drafting the ESG report? Thank you.
So maybe I'll start and then hand over. I think GRC or officer or the position is still evolving. So some companies, at least I've worked in 3 healthcare companies, so I can tell from that perspective is sometimes your GRC officers fall under legal and compliance, sometimes under regulatory, under finance, under HR. There is still not a and in some companies I've also seen it as an independent department. So still companies are kind of figuring it out where it falls. That's one. I think more than which department it falls under or which department it attached to is the real importance lies in its independence. As long as GRC department function, officer, personal, whatever terminology we want to use, as long as they have decision powers, as long as they are independent, it really doesn't matter whether they fall under HR ambit, they fall under legal and compliance ambit, finance. And again, with independence also, if they have proximity towards the board. If you're speaking and nobody hears, then, irrespective of whether you're independent or not, it will have no logical conclusion. So that's what I'll mention. Maybe I'll hand over.
Thank you. GRC is something which is tailor-made policies based on your enterprise's goals. So I have a goal, like a company, an entity has a goal, like we have a GRC policy which identified the risk which may happen during the course of the time when we're going to achieve the goals. So based on which we are framing the policies and which we are foreseeing the risks which we may face and which is erasing right from the budding stage. That is what GRC does. But ESG ESG is a broad spectrum. It has a broad audience and a broad area of action, which goes with an environment and socially bounded, for the contribution of the society. So these two are two different things. And ESG basically provides a sustainability in terms of your business. And it definitely give you a better future tomorrow. But GRC is basically what, which works for today to achieve the enterprise's goals. That's what it is. Because your GRC can be changed tomorrow based on your enterprise's goals. That's what happens. But ESG will not change. ESG is something, it's for a long-term plan, rather than a short-term plan. That's what it is. Thank you.
Just to add, I said at the beginning that sitting with legal experts will have a different perspectives. How I see it, GRC is part of ESG. So ESG has 3 pillars. It's environmental, social, and governance. Companies design products and services impact environment, and environment impacting companies, companies impacting social, and social impacting companies. And we come to G. So what is covered at the G pillar? It is a corporate governance, it is board of director, it is internal control, it is risk management, it is internal audit. So there are roles that practically will cover first line defense, second line of defense, and third line of defense, or third line of model, because the terminology changed recently. And about, so this is the connection, how I see it and how I interpret to my clients. And about the reporting, you jumped immediately to ESG reporting. When I am, when I meet with the companies, I'm in pressure of time, I hope I'm when I meet with my clients, new clients, let's say, we start talking about ESG, and they usually they have assumption or they think that they have ESG in place. Why? Because they have some certain things or certain activities. We never should think and start from reporting. Reporting is the last thing that the company should think of. Why? Because to design an ESG reporting, you have a journey to complete. You have to start from the beginning. You have to go back and to gather data and existing data. That's why it is not a cost, because the data are there. You will not have to invest anything. The data are there. You just need to gather them. You just need to structure them, to analyze them, and to interpret them properly to the interested parties and stakeholders, and including the board of directors, so decision-making people. So the differentiation between the two is almost none. They are part of each other, interchangeable to each other.
And I would quick add that I agree with my colleague Arbnora. GRC is part of ESG. I mean, they are the same pretty much. So what I've seen with different companies, it's part of the legal department. They usually have someone who drafts the policies for the companies to make sure that they're in compliance with ESG, GRC policies. So that's what I wanted to add.
Just to echo, it is very important to have a person that his or her role is independent and has a direct reporting to board of directors, at least for the beginning, at least till they consider that the ESG integration is well established. So it is very important to structure it within organization structure in a way that it not compromises his or her independence and objectivity. Same as with internal auditors. We want to have independent internal auditors. Therefore, we want to have a responsible sustainability person operating freely and independently and reporting to the decision makers directly. That will be the smartest decision for the company.
Thank you, and I think we have gone way ahead and past our time. Sorry for that. In any case, if anybody has a question, they can reach out to the panelists independently and not take more time because there is another panel waiting. So thank you so much and really appreciate your years.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to our moderator, Ms. Saloni Tuteja, and our esteemed panelist. Now, may I request to Ms. Saloni, please present the mementos to our esteemed panelist. Lalu, Pillai. It's Gbiamango, Yewawa. And now may I request to Arbnora to present the memento to Ms. Saloni Tuteja. Thank you. Now we invite all delegates to join us for lunch. Please take this opportunity to network, recharge, and connect with our fellow professionals. We will resume at 2:15 p.m. sharp. Thank you.